Just before I had him, I had to act the birth of my telly baby. I was 9 months pregnant at the time, and I literally was like, I can only do so much. You're not going to be able to film me because I can't push. I can't pretend to push. It's soul destroying. So much harder because it is something you're fighting for your child. When you feel helpless as a parent, it's one of the worst feelings. When you go into hospital and you're having a baby, you have to tick your age group.
Right.
It only goes up to 44. What do I put? I'm not dead.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest is an actress who I was obsessed with growing up. She was in The Upper Hand, she's been on Bad Girls, she's now in EastEnders, she's the mum of 3. It's Kellie Bright.
Oh, thank you so much. I didn't know you were going to say that. Thank you.
But you were like the I don't know how old you were when you did The Upper Hand, but you were like the teenager or the older kid we were all like fascinated with.
12. I started it when I was 12 and then I went right the way through till I was like 19 in the end. So I did grow up on the telly. Very much so. And so I often meet people who feel like they grew up with me or grew up alongside me. Yeah. I always make a joke about, you're giving your age away.
When you were younger then, because your career, you were so young when everything really kicked off. Did you ever look to the future and think of yourself as being a mum, or were you more kind of led by the roles? Because I think there is a weird thing with acting. Like, I would always be really wary of booking holidays, of doing anything that was, for me, in case.
Yes, I think your 20s, certainly. I was much more like, I can't do that just in case an audition comes up. I can't go there. I can't commit to that because I might get... that definitely waned. As I got older, I just think I got a bit more like, no, this is my life and I'm going to live it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I always wanted to be a mum. I was never like, I want to get married and I want the whole... I wasn't bothered about getting married, actually. And I didn't get married until after I'd had my first child. So it definitely wasn't like I wanted a fairy tale, but I just wanted to be a mum. And if you'd asked me as a young person how many children I thought I'd have 5. But being an actor, I don't know whether I actually necessarily thought I would ever achieve that. Because,
really?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to be a self-employed person and feel stable enough to have that. I feel very, very lucky that I've managed to get my 3.
Yeah.
I really do. But it was some kind of circumstance, I have to say.
Really?
Well, I just think if I hadn't been in EastEnders and had effectively what is like a regular job, then I wouldn't have perhaps felt like I had enough security to go forward with that. Plus also, I had my first child naturally. This is not that IVF is unnatural. Yeah. But I conceived naturally with my first son. And then my next 2, I couldn't get pregnant again. And so we went for IVF. And I was very lucky. My first round of IVF was successful. And I had my second child at 40. And I had 3 embryos that went in the freezer. And I never felt after I'd had that second one that I was done.
Also must be really difficult when you know that you've got those embryos in the freezer.
Well, I found it impossible. Yeah. I know that I have spoken to other mums in similar situations, and I think we all have that same thing where it's very difficult when you then have a baby or a toddler or a young child in front of you that has come from one of those embryos to not imagine what those embryos could turn into.
And realise that it could be them that's still in the freezer.
Yes, it's a whole... Yeah. And then it was we ummed and ahed about whether to go for a third or not. And then COVID happened. And actually COVID was the thing that really made us decide to go for it, which might sound bizarre to some people, but it was because of the stopping, like that first lockdown when everyone just had to step off their treadmill life that we're all on all the time, and I hate it. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly trying to find ways to make it slow down. But it was stepping off and having that sort of time at home as a family where it really just was us, was just us, that really made us go, oh, actually, this is everything. And we've got to try. Yeah. And actually, we are blessed because we have 2 lovely children. And if we have another one, amazing. And if we don't, then we don't. And so we went into it feeling very sort of philosophical, I suppose, and very much quite relaxed about it. Didn't last. Because, of course, as soon as anyone knows, as soon as you go down that road and you're doing all the stuff that you need to do, even if it's a frozen embryo transfer, as soon as you're in that, you want it so badly. Mm-hmm. And the first 2 transfers didn't work. And Rudy, who is now nearly 3, was the last one. And I didn't think he'd worked either because I had quite a significant bleed.
Right.
But here he is. So he really does feel. And then
does he feel like the baby you were meant to have?
I just feel like he was so supposed to be part of the family. I really do. I feel like his energy brings something to us all, that he just is special. Yeah. I just can't. I mean, they're all special, but he was just supposed to be here. I can't explain it any other way. And that's it, really. I love watching his relationship with the other 2 boys. So yeah, I do. I'm very glad that we decided to go for it. I honestly don't think I could have not.
Yeah,
I just couldn't have not. I had to just. And actually, I'm grateful that there are none left.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it would be playing on your mind.
I know. I'm sort of grateful that there are none now, and I am definitely not going to be having any more. Although my middle son said to me the other day, "Oh, just one more, Mum, just one more," and I was trying to explain to him why. It's really not, Mummy's not. Mummy can't really have any more babies, but why? And then I found myself trying to explain about aging eggs, and he was like, "Eggs?" I mean, it was not.
Mine regularly cry about not having another one. I'm like, guys, it is not happening. No. Like, Mummy's tired, and they're like, "But we love the chaos." I'm like,
oh God. I know, it's funny, isn't it? And also, my boys would not want a baby sister.
Oh, really?
So, because I said, well, if Mummy did have another baby, it could be a girl. No. And I'm like, well, you don't get to say, actually.
Well, it could be twin boys.
Oh, it could be. Don't even say it. Don't even whisper it. Don't think it. It's not going to happen for me. It could happen for you.
Oh, gosh. Well, going back to the start of it then, how did you get to a point where you were like, now's the time? After worrying about career and taking that time out, how did you kind of go, actually, it's time to put family life in the forefront?
Well, I met my husband when I was 31. So I was already in my 30s. And so I knew kind of what I wanted. My husband's much younger than me. She says, laughing gleefully. No, he was 24 when we met.
Oh, wow.
7 years younger than me. So he's now happily in the same decade as me. He's 41, I'm nearly 48. But we were sort of in quite different places when we first met for all of that stuff. And it was also important to me. I didn't want to just rush into anything with him. I didn't necessarily want to race into having a family. I wanted us to have some time. I think it's really important that you have a life before you have children, especially because the pressure once you have, I really feel in relationships, if someone was going to ask my advice, is getting married, perhaps doesn't have children. And, I said, look, you've got to remember that when it's just you two, you're kind of shining a light on each other. Yeah. All your attention is on each other. And then as soon as a small person comes along, you both turn your lights to the child and they just shine on the child. You have to really, really make the effort to shine it back at each other sometimes. So I do think it's really important. But it just kind of got to a point where we went travelling to Australia in a camper van and had the best time. But it was kind of like, okay, we're going to go off travelling and we'll see we'll see when we get back, we'll see. Maybe that's going to be the time to sort of go for it. I mean, I was chomping at the bit, I'm not going to lie. I was so ready. But I also had a history of mild endometriosis, I have to say. But I had certain things that I thought could complicate getting pregnant, which of course I told my husband to be all of this. I said, it's probably going to take us ages and, I think we should just start now. And anyway, of course, as I've heard other people say, we got pregnant straight away. I mean, literally the first month of trying and we were pregnant. And it was a shock to both of us.
Really?
I mean, a happy shock, but just, I think he thought I'd been lying. I think he thought I'd completely kind of, tricked him into it in some way. But I honestly hadn't. But yeah, it was just one of those happy, wonderful things that just was unexpected. And I never had a moment really of thinking, oh, what's this going to do to my career? I was very lucky. I got a job while I was pregnant with my first Freddy, and I auditioned for it and I wasn't showing. I was about 9-10 weeks or something. And I didn't say anything at the audition and I got the job. And then I said to Donna, because it was filming over about 4 months, and I was like, oh, we're going to have to tell them. And in fact, I did 2 jobs when I was pregnant. One, early days, no one knew. And then this one. And then we went back to them and said, actually, Kellie is pregnant. And so they made the character pregnant. I know.
That's
It's really lucky.
Good.
It's really good. Yeah. It was really good. It was a really lovely job because it wasn't too heavy. It was just a nice sort of amount. So I felt really lucky. And then my last 2 pregnancies, of course, I was at EastEnders. So
hiding behind.
The first one, I did a lot of hiding behind anything, anything that was available. And then the second time, they wrote it in again. They wrote it in and just made my character pregnant. So, which was so much easier than trying to hide. Also, when you have your third, as I'm sure you know, you look 6 months by the time you're 3 months.
Hold on, does your character now have a baby?
Yes. Well, she has a daughter who's the same age as my son.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fun, isn't it? Leaving your son behind to go to work and, there's another child.
Yes, no, I know. She's very sweet, though, and I get to do girly things with her that I don't get to do at home. Although I do try. I mean, I'm constantly painting my children's nails. And
mine love that.
Yeah, they love it.
It's, one of mine who is quite a wild child, his time of being really calm, really engaged is painting nails, having his nails done, painting mine.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do love all of that stuff.
How were your pregnancies? Did they differ?
Not really. I found the second time was different because you have a child.
Yeah.
It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't get to indulge or relax or, so and life was very different because when I was pregnant with Freddy, I wasn't working full time.
Yeah.
And I was with Jean and then the last time was definitely the hardest. Again, absolutely thrilled though, because I knew it was it felt sort of special that it had happened for me again at that age. I was 44 when I fell pregnant, 45 when I had him.
Did you feel that in your body?
Yes.
My third, I felt like I'd carried 2 babies before. Do you know what I mean? It felt
absolutely, and then some.
Yeah.
Like my joints.
Yeah.
I it's really, I feel really blessed that I've got to have my 3, and it's just happened for me the way it's happened.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think being an older mum is a bad thing in so many ways.
And also, you'll never know whether that way you felt in your third was due to age or just due to the fact that you'd grown too.
Yes.
I'd go and do the washing machine. I wouldn't be able to get back up.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, it was my hips, and I therefore I didn't sleep really because of the pain in my hips and my back, and it was just everything was very, very painful through my sort of third pregnancy, and I felt big and hot and heavy because he was born in the summer. He was my only summer baby as well.
Yeah.
I'm an absolute. I swell to the max.
Do you?
Oh, which my mum did apparently as well. Where in that last sort of 6 weeks, everything swells. So I can't get a shoe on. I can't. I mean, literally, if I showed you a picture, you would think someone had blown me up like a balloon.
Really?
My fingers, my toes. Yeah, really, really bad, really bad. But I don't even look like me. My lips swell. My nose spreads. Yeah, I look gorgeous. I look gorgeous. But my third birth was my best birth.
Oh, really? Well, let's talk about the birth then. Let's go for the number one. How was that?
Number one, he was a week late. So actually, this is a funny thing. Both my first and my second son were due on the same day.
No.
Yeah, 5 years apart. 5 years apart. So the 28th of November was their due date. And my first son was a week late, as is normal with first babies. But when I went for my 40-week check, my blood pressure was sky high.
Right.
And I was like I said, I was really, really swollen. Yeah. And they made me, I can remember walking. I did everything I could to try and bring this baby on. I walked home from the hospital one day because they were like, exercise is good. I was like, right, okay, I'm going to walk home. I had to collect my pee for 24 hours. So I literally had to walk around with this.
With all of your pee?
All of my pee for 24 hours. So I was walking, the walk home from the hospital, I was carrying like an American thing of orange juice.
Yeah.
It comes in a great big, I don't know, plastic
like
container.
Talking,
yes.
Guzzling.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was walking home with one of those, which had some of my pee in it. And then I got all the way, anyway, this was all to check for preeclampsia, which in the end they sort of said, yes, you do have preeclampsia. And in the end, after making me go to the hospital every day to be checked, on the 7th day, the most amazing midwife. And this is, again, I just think midwives are crucial to births. Mm-hmm. And this amazing midwife, and she said to me, listen, I can't let you go home today. I can't, because I have a duty of care to you, to your unborn child. And because it was coming from her and the way she spoke to me, and it wasn't just a doctor kind of going, what are you doing? We need to induce you.
Didn't feel like ticking boxes.
No. And I was like, okay. And so my husband came up to the hospital. We went for a meal across I'll never forget it. Went for a meal across the road. It's Carluccio's. and then we went, which was a bad idea as it turns out. Had a big bowl of pasta, went to the hospital. It was about 9:30 at night. And I was very, very, I was already, when they tell you, you're actually already 2 to 3 centimetres dilated. You're so close. You're slow, your waters are bulging. And so they actually broke my waters first to see if they could get me going. No joy.
Okay.
And I'd had sweeps all week, and all of that stuff. And then in the end, they put me on a drip, an oxytocin drip, which is effectively they're inducing you, but through a drip. And I'll never forget the conversation. It was like, so what pain relief would you like? And I was like, I don't want any. I'm going to do it all naturally. I don't. And they were like, are you sure? You are going to need some. It's not like going into birth naturally. You will need some. And I was like, no. Anyway, cut to 1 a.m. Give me an epidural. And so I'm very grateful to the wonderful people that gave me the epidural. And I then actually went to sleep.
Nice.
Which was lovely. And then I woke up, I don't know, maybe about 8 a.m. or something. 9 a.m. I was fully dilated, and it was an epidural where I could top it up. You sort of clicked a thing, and I could top it up on. So they said, right now, don't top it up anymore. Don't and let it sort of wear off a bit so that you can feel to push. And I actually could get onto my knees. I mean, I could move, even though I'd had this pain relief. It was actually amazing when I look back, because I've heard so many sort of not horror stories, I don't want to say that, but stories where then it leads to the next thing and an assisted birth and then another intervention. And obviously, I don't think many women want that. If you have that in your head, you think, I just want to do this. And then I had this incredible midwife who essentially broke all the rules. And she said, you're not putting your legs in the stirrups. You're going to put one leg up here on her shoulder, and one on her hip.
Right.
And actually, where Freddy was positioned, they thought the cord was around his neck, but it was actually his arm. that was pressed against his own neck. So I had to sort of give birth on my side, because every time I sort of went onto my change position, his heart rate was going down.
Yeah.
So I was on my side. I'll never forget it. And he came out actually fist first. He was like Superman. Fist first, then head, then arm, then the rest of his body. And it was all quite straightforward. Like the actual pushing part didn't take forever, and it all sort of happened as it should. And it was all relatively not traumatic.
Yeah.
And, you know, I actually came through it thinking, oh, that was a really nice birth, actually. All right, I had an epidural, but that's fine. That was great, actually. And the midwives were just fantastic. And that was all. And he was here, and that was that. And he was everything immediately, and he was everything I dreamt he was going to be and more. And now here's a story. He was a Woody for the first 5 minutes he was born, because that was the name we thought we were going to call him if we had a boy.
Yeah.
And actually we started calling him Woody, which I still love, by the way. I think it's a brilliant name. But we started calling him Woody, and we both sort of went, oh, it's not his name.
It's so true.
It's not his name. Oh, my God. And then we were like, oh. And we had sort of 4 or 5 other names that we liked but we were sure that was what it was going to be. And then sort of together, we just went, and he's Freddy. He's a Freddy.
Aww.
And so he then very quickly became a Freddy.
It's funny, isn't it? I think sometimes you do need that sort of pool of names.
Yes.
These are the ones, but who are they when we meet them?
Yes, completely. And I do always say that to people who are pregnant. I say, I know you might think you know the name, but always have a few.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know until you really look in their eyes. And so, and he was a beautiful baby, and he's still a beautiful boy.
Yeah.
He really is.
Did you feel really positive going into the second birth after that experience?
I did, but I also felt really unprepared, because my second birth, so Jean came a week early, and I went into labour naturally, which for me was brand new.
Yeah.
And we just moved back into our house. We had, honestly, when I say it was a building site, it was a building site. And I literally woke up, I think it was about 5 a.m, 5:30, and I thought, oh, something's happening. I thought, I'm all right. I won't wake anyone up yet. I went downstairs. I thought, I'll just get a bit more unpacking done. That's what I'll do. I mean, the mad things you do. I don't know what I was thinking. So I was unpacking some boxes, and then about an hour went by, and they started to get a bit more frequent. And I thought, I better wake Paul up.
Yeah.
So I went and woke Paul up. My mum had come down to stay to look after Freddy. And I woke Paul up, and I said, I'm in labour. He was like, what? I said, no, it's okay, I'm in labour. I said, but I'm all right. I said, I think we're all right for a bit. So he came down and got my mum up. And
there's that funny moment as well when people know that's happening and they just look at you.
I know.
For like more signs.
I know.
Like especially partners, because they can't feel it.
I know.
They're just really trying to assess what's going on.
Well, I sort of got up, got my son up, got him ready for school. I'm chatting away to my mum. And then sort of when the contractions were coming, I was a bit like, okay. And then it got to sort of 8 o'clock. My mum said, and when we turned up, you know that thing where you come in and you go, I'm in labour, and they look at you as if to say, oh, you're going to, okay. And I'm like, no, I'm really in labour. And I really, because I'd had an epidural before and I'd had that experience, I was like, I want an epidural. And I was ushered into, they did a triage examination of me, and I think I was, I don't know, 6 to 7 or something. Yeah. You know, I was on my way anyway.
Yeah.
But by the time they put me into a room with a locum midwife. So the midwife had never worked at this hospital before. And she didn't know where anything was. She didn't know where she didn't know how to sort of do anything. It was the weirdest. She'd disappear off for like ages. And all I was doing was literally grabbing my husband, going, make her get me an epidural. Just make her get me one. Make her get me one. And anyway, so he was going. By this point, of course, I had taken off all my clothes.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because I think you get your outfit ready for, like, all the stuff ready for the hospital. Oh, I'll wear that nightie or that T-shirt naked.
I took all. I remember standing with my hands on the side of the bed because there was no way I could get on the bed. And I was standing with my hands on the bed, literally, like an animal. Mm-hmm. And my waters went. And I knew, the sad thing is that actually I look back on this birth and I think if I'd had a different midwife in the room with me, it could have been a really different story. And actually I could have got through it fine. But I got back on the bed. She made me sort of lay on the bed, and she didn't make me. I can't remember this bit actually, but I definitely at this point I got an epidural. Now, in hindsight, I should never have had an epidural. I was too far gone. And what happened, of course, is that it slowed everything down. And then she put me on the bed and she made me put my legs in the stirrups. And I was like, I can't do anything from here. I can't.
Was it because? So I've never had the stirrups, but you've got nothing to push.
You've got nothing to push against.
Yeah.
So you're sort of suspended in air. I mean, it's the weird. I'd have no idea why they make women do that. I do not understand, especially if you've had an epidural or something like that, because you need the purchase. You need to be able to push against something. And so I can remember literally trying to saying, this is wrong, I don't want to. Anyway, I'm trying to push him out because she's saying, fully dilated, the baby's here. But what had happened essentially is that he was sort of stuck in the birth canal. She hit a red button. Every doctor in the hospital, I felt like, ran in. And there was definitely a moment where they were going, if you don't get this baby out now, we are going to have to come in. And I was like, I am going to get him out. I'm going to get him out. And of course I did. I say of course, I did. I tore myself to shreds in the process. And he was very blue when he was born. Thankfully, he was absolutely fine. But he was very blue and he had to go to neonatal for a little while in the afternoon because his heart rate was not settling. So it was either racing or it was, But he was literally gone for a few hours. And then he was back with us. So it was all fine in the end, but I definitely have some, I don't know, guilt, is that the right word, over that birth, or feeling like I wish I'd done it a bit differently.
Well, there's obviously quite traumatic elements within that, like people rushing in. That's your baby in blue.
I met a doctor years later as well, in a completely different setting. I don't know where I was with one of my children, maybe an A&E or something, who then said to me, I was in that room when I rushed in, or when you were having your, and I was like, oh, were you? I had no idea. But she said, yes, I was there. I said, oh my God, okay. And then my third, so Rudy.
Well, how did you feel going into this labour, having had?
Well, I felt, it's very, when you get to the age I was, so I don't know if you remember this, when you go into hospital and you're having a baby, you get all sorts of there were little sections of, you have to tick your age group.
Right.
It only goes up to 44. And I was like, what do I put? I'm not dead. I'm here, 45 plus. So I knew that they would be on me.
Right.
Because as soon as you turn 40, actually, that everything changes.
Right.
And I turned 40 during my pregnancy with Jean. So actually, they let me get away with a lot more, because the day that I went into labour naturally with Jean, I was supposed to be going to the hospital anyway for a sweep.
Right, okay.
Because I was trying to hold off being induced. Mm-hmm. And anyway, when you're as ancient as I was, they were very much like, and actually they were insisted on inducing me early. They induced me early because I had gestational diabetes with him, but actually I probably had gestational diabetes with all of them and didn't know. But they're so hot on. It's really interesting having babies 10 years apart. That's something I will say. So with Freddy, I had 2 scans. I had a 12-week scan, a 20-week scan, and that was it. And I really, really think there is a lot to be said for that.
Really?
I do, because I think doing later scans, I think a lot of it really, really induces anxiety in mothers-to-be, especially if it's your first. I've met so many people who go, they're saying my baby's small, or they're saying my baby's big, and they're saying, Rudy, so they were constantly measuring Rudy and his size. They told me he was off the charts in terms of his size for where that at that stage, and that they had to induce me early because ultimately they were worried about him getting too big and getting sort of stuck. And I mean, they give you horrible leaflets about shoulders getting stuck, and you're just like, okay. I mean, I'm very glad he was my third, and I was a bit more like, okay, we'll see what happens. I've had 2 babies, I will see. But when they took me in to induce me, which was actually 2 weeks and 2 days before he was due, I knew I wasn't ready.
Right.
I knew I was nowhere. I could tell. I've had children. I knew I wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. I knew he wasn't ready, and I was a bit like, oh. But obviously I went through the process, and that's the first time I'd ever really properly gone through that process. I'd never been on an induction ward before, but it got to them they'd done everything that they could do. And so then it was a case of, well, now we just have to wait until a space comes up on the labour ward, and we'll take you down, and then I don't even know what the next thing was going to be, but it was either going to be a drip or a break your waters or something. And I was like, oh. And this midwife came in, and she was supposed to be examining me. And she said, do you want me to give you a sweep? Now, technically, midwives are not allowed to give you a sweep until you are 39 weeks. And at this point, I was 38 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sweep away. So she gave me what can only be described as a rather excruciating sweep. Mm-hmm. But within an hour of that, I was in full-blown labour, very, very, like it all then happened very quickly. I was taken down to the labour ward, and he was literally born half an hour, 40 minutes later. He flew out. He didn't fly out, but I just had gas and air. Yeah. I had 2 amazing. The lady that had given me my sweep actually came down with me, and then I had another amazing midwife in the room, and there were no stirrups involved. Yeah. And it was, but I wanted to feel it. I wanted to have a go at feeling it because he was going to be my last. Mm. And actually, there is something so incredible about birthing your baby that way. And I felt it made me feel really connected to him immediately. But I will never get over the fact that in between contractions, I could feel his face in my vagina.
No! Could you?
Yeah, I could. There was a moment where he was like half out, and I could feel his face. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Oh, there's something about this. It's not quite.
Well, how were your recoveries?
They were pretty good. I seem to remember. I couldn't poo the first time.
Oh, that first poo.
I didn't want to. I had a real thing about I just couldn't bring myself to. I didn't want to go. Yeah. I didn't want to go. I think that's quite a normal thing. I just had a real thing about
having a pad and pushing the front. So that, to support the front. Yeah.
Wow. No one told me this.
Just because it feels like you're going to literally rip yourself in 2.
Well, it does. And it feels like everything's going to fall out. It's just, it's horrendous, isn't it? But I definitely had a thing. But I didn't have that with the second 2. I mean, I had stitches every time. So I had to look after the stitches and... Mm-hmm. But actually,
again, though, the advice from the first to the last in that in terms of stitches would have been vastly different.
Oh, so different. Everything was different. Everything was different, really. I mean, I did have an NCT group with my first one, and I am so grateful. I do think they are brilliant because I learned everything from them. I had a weird thing where I thought I didn't read any books. I didn't do any I just thought I'll just know. I'll just know what to do.
I'm maternal. It's all fine.
It'll be fine. I'm sure things kick in. My mum was also like, I can't remember. I'd ask her a question. I can't remember. And I naively thought that something inside, and I'm sure on some level it does, breastfeeding and all of that sort of stuff. But even that, you need to be shown how best to do it so it doesn't actually destroy you.
Well, I think if I hadn't had a breastfeeding class, I would have just thought that it was the nipple. I don't think I would have gone and more. Do you know what I mean? The burger.
Yeah. I know. It's a whole. But I heavily relied on my fellow mums who thankfully had read the books and did know. Oh, well, that probably means he needs this, or it probably means he needs, and I was like, okay, great. So I was so grateful for that. And I got to be at home with him a lot. You know, I did a play when he was about 8 months old, which was too soon, actually.
And how long did you wait with the next two then in terms of going back to work? So then you're in EastEnders.
With Jean, I think I took in total about 6 months. And with Rudy, it was less. I was about 4.5, maybe.
How did they do that if your character was going to give birth on the show? Not on the show, but in terms of she was pregnant, she was having a baby.
I did give birth on the show. I mean, I was 9 months pregnant. I mean, I stopped working with Rudy 2 weeks before I had him.
Right.
So, and just before I had him, I had to act the birth of my telly baby. And I was 9 months pregnant at the time. And I literally was like, I can only do so much. You're not going to be able to film me because I can't push. I can't pretend to push. It's not. I don't think I feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
So I actually sort of gave birth before I gave birth, but they sent off my character went off to stay with her mum or something. I think. And yeah, it's just. I mean, sometimes I really just want to get off the treadmill because I do. It is a treadmill, and it can sometimes the spinning of the plates is like.
Yeah.
But I'm also glad I have the plates to spin. Yeah.
Well, talking about spinning plates, at the end of last year, you shared something online that was really personal to you. And it's, you know, we were talking earlier about not really putting personal stuff out there. You don't put private stuff out there. However, you started talking about your son and his EHCP.
Mm-hmm, I did.
Was that the first time that you'd ever put anything out?
It was the first time, very much so. And I actually, I recorded it. If you've ever seen it on Instagram, you can tell it's very immediate to what I've just heard, or I just
you can feel your energy. Actually,
yes, I'd sort of just read this email essentially saying that they would assess my son for an EHCP, and it had been 10 months of getting nothing but no's, and so it's quite an emotional video. But I recorded it, and there were two reasons. I didn't actually post it for a week. One, because I wasn't sure how I felt about posting it. If I wanted to post it, I knew I'd be opening up a big conversation. Mm-hmm. And also, I didn't know how to post it. And that is the truth. I had to get someone at work to help me because I couldn't work out. So... Anyway, I did end up posting it, but what happened off the back of it was completely bonkers.
Well, in the lead up to it, because I think when you are on that path, anyone that's on that path, it feels really isolating for you, for your child, and you almost want other people to go, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
But you feel so lonely. And actually posting that video, you had 10,000 people comment on that video, and so many of them were sharing their experiences. Like, we talk about opening up conversations, and I think it is a really tricky conversation to open because it's not just us as parents, it's our children, and that is a very different thing. But what you did by sharing is you allowed so many other people to feel like, God, it's not just me that feels like I have to fight.
Yes.
It's not just me that feels like their son is, or that their child is, ostracized in some way, or that people aren't behind them.
Yeah. I just felt really compelled, is the only way I can describe it. I don't feel compelled to share a lot of my life, but I feel I am in a privileged position. I have a platform, I have a voice, and if I'm going to use it for anything, I'm going to use it for something that I feel matters. Yeah. And I did want other people to know that I just wanted people to know it can happen. Just keep going. I know it's soul destroying, and it's so much harder because it is something you're fighting for your child. And I think when you feel helpless as a parent, it's one of the worst feelings. And for me, it was unless you're in that world where you have a child that doesn't fit into the current parameters or box that we call education. until you are in that, you don't understand it, you don't see it. Why would you? I don't begrudge people that. But when you are suddenly faced with that, which I was not expecting, I didn't see it coming. My experience of school was very different. I loved school. I didn't find school challenging.
Yeah.
So to suddenly be faced with a very different experience for my son was really, it has been the biggest learning curve of my life so far. It's something I feel very strongly about. I still think there's so much that needs to change. We have got to start looking at education at its kind of core and what we're delivering and what changes need to be made at that level. Because I hate to say it, but SEND isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
The numbers are growing exponentially year on year. And that's partly because you have parents now who are advocating for their children, going, no, it's not okay. I'm not going to let my child go through their school life, which, let's face it, takes up their childhood. Okay, so their whole childhood is really spent at school, and they're going to come out of it, feeling like they're rubbish at everything, that they don't like who they are, that they have nothing to offer the world. They have, I'm not, and I know I'm not alone in saying this, but I'm not prepared to do that.
Yeah.
No way. And so we have to find a different way. And I do think that, I have met some incredible people who are really fighting. They're really fighting, trying to get changes made. But it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot, but I am prepared to keep going. I'm not stopping.
For people that don't know, what is an EHCP?
So an EHCP, for anyone that doesn't know, it stands for an Education Health Care Plan. And the thing about an EHCP is it covers everything from, I don't know how best to describe it, but it covers lots of disabilities. So physical disabilities as well as learning disabilities. It could be for someone that's able to be in a mainstream school with support, right the way through to someone that needs very specific, specialised support in I hate this word, special setting. I don't know why we call it special, but a different setting that can cater to their needs. So it covers a huge sort of span. But they're not easy to come by, and they take an awful lot of, there's lots of things that have to happen in order to get the assessment in the first place. Local authorities are struggling because they have lost so much funding. There aren't people on the ground. I met someone recently who said one of the biggest issues is the fact that we don't have people like ed psychs or speech and language therapists or occupational therapists on the ground to deliver what these EHCPs are asking for, because effectively people that are in those professions, we don't have enough people in those professions, but the ones that do can't survive on the salary that they're being offered, so they're working privately or they're doing a bit of both. But it's funding. So
there's lots of things going on, because an EHCP, they say, will take 20 weeks from the point of when you're first told you're going to get one. Right?
Yes.
That's what it's meant to.
Yes.
But even then, when you have that, being able to actually implement what that says.
Yes.
In lots of ways, I would imagine that it feels like people are listening to your child, and that for me is a massive thing.
Yes.
It suddenly feels like, instead of having a school or teachers or a mistress or whatever that goes, they don't do this, they don't do that, they don't do this. You're suddenly in a room where everyone is leaning into the child and what their needs are, and that, as a parent, feels completely different to having a child who simply doesn't do what they want them to do.
Absolutely.
But then you've got the EHCP, and it's got to be implemented.
It has. And I just think when we got our EHCP, the lady who was amazing, and I don't know if I should name her, but she was fantastic, from our local authority, and she was the first person actually that I'd met from our local authority she was the first person that I really felt was on his side.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, oh wow, oh, I don't have to fight you. Oh, this is amazing. But she always said to me, the piece of paper is just a piece of paper. It's the people who sort of implement the piece of paper that will make the difference. It's about the people. And if the people aren't there, then that poses a whole bunch of other questions. I mean, I think, again, it varies hugely as to where your child is at school and what the school is able to deliver. My son is at a fantastic school. It's a state school, secondary school. But they have a really great reputation for children with individual needs, and they are doing as much as they can.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I have thought about many, many options for my son, and I have asked myself many, many questions. Is a mainstream school the right school for him? Would he be better off in a special school? Would he be better off homeschooled? Mm-hmm. Would, so many questions. And I think it's really hard sometimes as a parent to go, oh, if I make that decision for them, though, am I making the right one?
Yeah.
I don't want to make the wrong one. I don't. But I do feel, I feel like school isn't just about the lessons either, is it? Let's face it. That's the thing. It's not just about what happens in the classroom. It's about them learning, I guess, certainly at secondary school level, a slight, a level of independence. Mm-hmm. It's about them gently pulling away from you and learning to do things for themselves, and also navigating the social side of school, which actually I think is one of the hardest if you've got a child with SEN. I mean, for us, that's our experience. Because children are just children, and they don't necessarily understand the differences. They certainly might not be tolerant of the differences. And that's all they are as well. I really feel strongly about that. I'll never forget when we got his diagnosis, and the doctor sort of said, how do you feel about your son having a sort of invisible disability? And I was like, what? I couldn't get my head around the fact that what he was being diagnosed with was a disability. I still don't think of it like that. And I wonder whether we should be as a society, or just embracing the differences.
Yeah.
But it's not, the current system is really not set up for all children. That's my thing.
And it seems like that is being said more than ever now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether that's because maybe we both found ourselves in this world, and therefore we're really tuned into that. But it feels like more than ever people are saying, this system is so archaic, it's so old, it's not fit for purpose.
It's not fit for purpose. And I do feel like I don't understand why we are so reluctant to overhaul it, or why no one is willing to sort of put themselves out there and go, okay, let's look at Finland, or let's look at alternative providers and see what's working there and what we can learn from that, and what we can then implement. And I would like to see, I think for me, one of the biggest things I feel about it all really is that I feel that my son sort of doesn't fit in a mainstream school, but wouldn't fit in a special school either. And so there's this big hole in the middle, this sort of grey area that I think lots and lots of children would fit into.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything for them. And if, for example, if there was a school local to me that was at state level and offered a different way of learning, a more creative-led learning process, we would jump at it.
Yeah.
100%. It would suit him so much better. But there is nothing like that. I would really love to see big changes happen. I really would. I think they have to. Yeah. I do think they have to, actually, because, like I said, there's such demand for SEND services now, and like I said, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to keep growing. And actually, if we don't start kind of looking at what needs to shift right at the sort of heart of it all, we're never going to keep up with it. The supply is never going to keep up with the demand.
Yeah.
It's just not. And we're just constantly going to be chasing our tail and talking about lack of funding, I think.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
you know, I had off the back of that Instagram thing I did, the people that came up to me, people I'd worked with for years who I didn't know, had like the sound operator and the lighting director who started almost crying talking to me about his grandchildren. I mean, these are people I've been with for 10 years who I would never have known had a story like mine or had experiences like mine. I mean, it's everywhere. Everywhere. And so if I meet anyone in the street now, they always want to talk to me about that. They want to tell me about their experience or, you know, which is actually a really nice thing. And I knew that's what would happen. I knew that by posting that, I would be opening up this conversation, but I want to open it up.
Yeah.
I want to open it up. I want people to know they're not on their own. I also want people to know it's, you know, your child. I'll never forget this. I had a friend who has a daughter who is at a special school and has an EHCP for her. We weren't going to go for an EHCP because I'd heard so many stories about how hard it was to get one. And she said to me, your child has the right to be educated to the best of to fulfill their potential. Like they have the right to an education that fulfills their potential. And that's it. And I was like, you're so right. You're so right. And that really sort of started the journey. And I really do believe that. I really do believe that. I won't have it that you know, we're just fulfilling the potential of some children and others, oh, well, you know, just the way it is. It doesn't have to be just the way it is. It can be so much better. And actually people need to keep taking a stand for their children. And, you know, but it is exhausting. It's so exhausting. And you do get to a point where you think, I mean, when I sent off that final stuff for his EHCP, I was like, I'm done. If we get a no, it's so what? Well, that's it. I'm done. Just couldn't imagine doing anything more. Yeah. But sometimes I think you just then have to. But it's hard, isn't it? And we've probably got other children. We might have a job. Yeah. Even if we haven't a job, we've got a job at home looking after our children. You know, we've got multiple jobs, don't we? You know, let's face it, it's not just about a job outside of the home. It's sometimes I'm busier. In fact, I would say categorically I'm busier when I'm at home than when I'm at work.
Nice, relaxing time at work. Kelly, if you could write a letter on being a mum, who would it be to and what would you say?
I would write a letter to my younger self, actually. And I would say, it's not what you think it's going to be, but it is better.
No.
Because it isn't what I thought it was going to be at all. But it is better. It is much more in every way than what I could imagine.
Yeah.
It's much more than just having a dolly that you dress up in your baby clothes. Which I never got to do, really. But it's that's what I would say. It's nothing like I don't think in my head. I don't think you can imagine it. Can you imagine it?
No.
Really? I think you know. But then
also, though, I think because of having that thing of how we imagine it to be, we can spend too much time trying to make your family what you thought it was going to be. Yeah. And what I've realised over the years is actually just embracing what we actually are and embracing the chaos.
Absolutely.
Makes it far more enjoyable.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm constantly aware of if something comes out of my mouth that something like my mum or dad would have said, I'm like, oh, Kelly, stop it. Just stop it. Yeah, forget it. You want to run around and eat your dinner? Go for it.
Right, we end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences.
Yes.
The first one is being a mum means.
Now, I don't really, I know what I want to say.
Okay.
But it's knowing how to say it. It's something like being a mum means holding up a mirror. Because, and what I mean by that is my children have forced me in a way to look at things in myself. They're like a reflection of you is sort of what I'm saying. So things about my children that perhaps I found difficult, let's say, I have had to acknowledge that there things that are in me. Yeah. And I found that whole thing, I think I've learned more about myself because of that than I ever could have done if I hadn't become a mum. Yeah. So it's, being a mum is holding up a mirror for me.
Since having children, I
have no time. Easy. Have no time. I mean, I actually went off in my camper van at the weekend on my own.
Did you?
I did.
Where did you go?
I went to the Sussex Downs, and I literally went to a very, very low-key, lovely campsite where it was a composting. Are we talking composting toilets? Right, like that kind of level. Yeah. No electricity, no nothing. And I was at one with the trees and the nature, and I just took my crochet. I took my little camping stove and I just switched off. I think we are very much a neurodiverse household, and I need to switch my brain off sometimes. I need to just shut it down and just stop. And so I had a little weekend to myself. But so I do say, and I appreciated every minute of it. Yeah. That's where that comes from, because there is no time. There is never enough time. Never enough time.
And finally, I'm happy when?
Oh, I'm happy when my children are happy. Yeah. I'm happy when my children are happy, for sure.
Kellie, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this chat.
Oh, me too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.